But those of you dealing with subcontractors, you have the wrap policy you're dealing with, but also in your client's subcontract, there's a document called the wrap addendum. And that is an extraordinarily important document when you're defending subcontractors in relation to wrap policies, because where the insurance policy giveth, the wrap addendum taketh away. So it's very, very important that you read the policy on behalf of your sub, but you also read the wrap addendum to see how that may affect your client's obligations. Primary wrap cons for the subcontractors are, there's a number of them. One of which is you have two typical type of wrap policies. You have a project-specific wrap, and you have what we call a rolling wrap, where a developer purchases wrap coverage for a number of different projects. And where that affects a subcontractor is there may not be, if you are a subcontractor that worked on a subsequent project, there may not be enough wrap coverage to cover you as a subcontractor when the rubber hits the road, when you do need that coverage. So that is a big problem for the subcontractor. Another problem on the subcontractor side we see is when we have mixed lawsuits where a portion of the job was covered by a wrap, the rest of it not covered by a wrap. That creates a lot of difficult issues in defense when you have the developer purportedly representing all of the parties, including the subcontractors, on the non-wrap home, or on the wrap homes, and then pointing the finger at the subcontractors on the non-wrap homes. Not that you never do that. You never do that. But we see that as a big problem on wraps. The other issue is where there is a deductible, and of course, developers being developers, they want to force the subcontractors to pick up as much of the expense as possible, which includes the SIRs. So when we have a situation where maybe our subcontractor client is out of business and does not have the possibility of satisfying that SIR, our subcontractor client is left with no coverage, typically because most of the subcontractor CGL policies have wrap exclusions, which state to the extent that an subcontractor insured is covered under a wrap, their CGL policy does not cover that case. So that puts the subcontractor in a position of not having any coverage at all. And one of the things that developer lawyers are doing is they are demanding, even in wrap-covered projects, that subcontractors provide their CGL policies to see if there is, in fact, a wrap exclusion. And if they're not, they are insisting that those CGL policies for the subcontractors get triggered, thereby lowering the remaining aggregate of the subcontractor, potentially triggering an SIR or deductible of the subcontractor. So when the subcontractor thinks that they actually are covered under a wrap, the developer lawyers are actually looking to suck back in their CGL coverage. Go ahead. So this is language that you will actually typically see if you're looking for it. If you look at the first one, any bid submitted to the general contractor by subcontractor shall be reduced to reflect the subcontractor's savings on their insurance as a result of coverages provided under the wrap. Quite often what is happening is the cost of the subcontractor's CGL coverage is actually lowered to the extent that they have projects covered under a wrap program. So the general contractors wanting to continue to stick their hands in the subcontractors' pockets will now go and say, well, hey, if I'm providing you with this wrap and you're saving money, we want it. So keep an eye on that. This is a pretty typical provision in your wrap addendum, which says the subcontractor will agree to pay on demand either a sum certain as part of the SIR or what their own CGL policy would require them to pay, usually whichever is more. So if the subcontractor has a policy, a CGL policy with a $25,000 SIR, the developer thinks, bonus, I can now go to this sub and say, I want you, because I'm demanding, you to pay me $25,000 to satisfy the SIR for the wrap policy. And when the developer is looking to see which subcontractors they want to trigger, I suppose which one has the highest SIR requirement may come into play in determining which subcontractors to put on notice. And keep in mind that when you do have an issue regarding the sufficiency of the wrap limits, you may be dealing with an excess wrap situation. And what I'm seeing is most excess wrap carriers are taking the position that the subcontractor's CGL coverage is part of the primary limits that must be exhausted before the excess wrap will drop down. The subcontractor's friends. Boss. Carrier has an obligation to defend the entire case, which in my opinion includes wrap-covered homes and non-wrap-covered homes. Armstrong election. You can Armstrong elect away from your CGL carrier to the wrap to defend. Keep that in your arsenal.